Howdy friends, I'm currently working on a 2D action horror game and I'd like to share some of the progress that I've made so far. I've been wanting to start implementing the main gameplay loop for a while, but first there are some pretty glaring issues, mostly around combat, so I'll need to address those first. As far as devlogs go, this will primarily just be me explaining my current thought process as I show off gameplay in its current state. Full disclaimer, the game is in rough shape right now. Deciding to create all of the 2D art assets in addition to writing all of the code has been a fun challenge, to say the least. First things first, it might help to give a brief overview of what I have working so far, as well as what still needs to be implemented down the line. Side note, if you're curious and want me to go more in depth, please don't hesitate to leave a comment letting me know, and I'll be more than happy to make a follow-up video explaining the why and how for the systems I have working so far. So, Field Day is a top-down 2D action horror game where the player is tasked with dispatching monsters and collecting materials from them. In terms of plot, you play as a contractor for a research company specializing in making and enhancing bioweapons. You'll be tasked with performing odd jobs such as maintaining and repairing the power grid, cleaning and organizing research station, and dispatching with failed experiments. As the story progresses, I plan on adding puzzles and traps as well as other world interaction points that permanently alter the game state. But right now the gameplay loop is pretty basic. As I said, combat still needs a lot of work, and there isn't really much for the player character to do other than kill enemies and collect loot. Eventually, the player will be able to trade in this loot in exchange for upgrades to their equipment, but right now it just sits in their inventory, doing nothing. Another issue that seems to continually crop up is that the event emitter and consumer controller system that I've implemented causes some issues when it comes to handling animations and sound effects, so I'd also like to take care of that as well. I'd also like to tackle adding more enemy variety at some point, but in order for their hits to even register, these current enemies are violating the player's personal space, and I've got to put a stop to that. One thing I noticed right away is that when constructing the original enemy sprites, I did not account for any animations that might require more than 32 pixels in length. This definitely creates a problem for me, as I'd like to recreate some of the attack animations that I've already made, just with a little more reach added to them so that they'll be able to attack the player from a distance. Ideally, I would just make changes to a few of the attack animations, leaving the rest intact. Starting over from scratch is just not an option for me. It's not because of time constraints or anything, I just like the commitment to grow as a person in that way. Thankfully, the program that I use to create all the 2D assets in-game, makes life incredibly easy in that regard. All I needed to do was press C, decide what dimensions I wanted for these new sprites, and Sprite applied those changes to each frame for me. Now comes the hard part, actually going through and updating the attack animations frame by frame. I guess I can talk a little bit about the main inspirations for this game. Obviously, Resident Evil is a big one, Dead Space, movies like David Cronenberg's The Fly and Ridley Scott's Alien. For these first few enemies, I want to devote a lot of time to capturing the fluid nature of their biology. The player should never be completely sure how and where their bodies are going to deform, which I think adds a lot to the tension of each engagement. This approach also gives me a lot more freedom when designing each enemy's attacks. This approach also gives me a lot of freedom when creating their attacks, since I can basically make each attack look unique without having to adhere to strict anatomical constraints. Of course, with the animations done, now comes the process of updating the enemy sprites in Unity. While I'm replacing the old attack animations, I'm going to look into doing some small refactor work around the combat system. Now, there are definitely some bug fixes that need to go into place before I can call the combat working. Right now, though, I'm happy with the look of the new animations at least. Down the line, I'll be adding more in-between frames in order to smooth out the animations a bit, but the main issue that I wanted to tackle today has at least been resolved. Enemies can finally kill humans while still being respectful of their boundaries. Next up on the agenda is fixing the sound issues. I'd imagine that's an easy fix. I just need to add an animation event that plays the sound on the exact frame that I need it to. Also need to fix animation transitions not playing when the enemy state changes. There's also the issue with the combat scripts making asynchronous state updates during combat, which I think is what's breaking the animations. But thankfully, those are all future problems. As far as today goes, I hope you guys have been having a good one. Thanks for dropping by, and take care.